I'm 73 years old, and I'm about to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Everything you think you know about being a good partner, about what makes a marriage work, about sacrifice and dedication, most of it is completely wrong. And the worst part? The people who should be telling you this, the ones who've been married for decades and seem happy, they're either lying to you or they don't know themselves. I spent 50 years being what I thought was the perfect husband. I never cheated, never raised my voice, worked 80-hour weeks to provide everything my family could want, said yes to everything, swallowed every complaint, made myself smaller and smaller until there was almost nothing left of who I actually was. And you know what all that perfection got me? At 68 years old, my wife sat me down in our living room, the same living room where we'd celebrated 50 Christmases together, and told me she'd been having an affair for 30 years. 30 years. She wanted a divorce. She was done pretending. I remember that moment with perfect clarity. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October. I'd just retired 6 months earlier, thinking we'd finally have time together, time to enjoy what we'd built. The light was coming through the window behind her, and I couldn't see her face clearly, just this silhouette of the woman I thought I knew. She said the words, and I felt something in my chest crack open, not like a heart attack, more like a dam breaking. Everything I'd believed about my life, about who I was, about what I'd accomplished, it all just poured out and disappeared. I sat there on the couch we'd picked out together 20 years ago, and I couldn't speak. I literally could not form words. She kept talking, explaining, justifying, and I just stared at her. This stranger wearing my wife's face. The affair had started when I was 38. That means for the entire time our kids were in high school, for their college graduations, for our silver anniversary, for my mother's funeral when she held my hand, and I thought how lucky I was to have her. She was sleeping with someone else. His name was Robert. He worked at her office. I'd met him at company parties. Nice guy, I'd thought. We'd shaken hands. I'd made small talk with the man who'd been sleeping with my wife for 3 decades. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. Our kids took her side. They said I was emotionally distant, that I'd never been really present, that I'd cared more about work than family. They said I'd driven her to it. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment at 69 years old with 2 suitcases and a box of things from my office. Everything else, the house, the furniture, the life, it all belonged to someone I never actually knew. Let me tell you the biggest lie you're probably telling yourself right now, especially if you're in a relationship. You think that if you just do everything right, if you sacrifice enough, provide enough, accommodate enough, never complain, never demand, never take up too much space, you'll be safe, you'll be loved, your relationship will work. That's what I believed. From the day I got married at 23 years old, I believed that being the perfect husband meant never being selfish, never putting my needs first, always saying yes, always being accommodating, always being grateful just to be chosen. I thought that's what love was. Erasing yourself for someone else. I worked 80-hour weeks at a job I hated because it paid well, and my wife wanted a nice house. I said yes to every family obligation, every favor, every request, no matter how exhausted I was. I never complained when she made decisions without consulting me. I never objected when she spent money we didn't have. I never pushed back when she dismissed my feelings or opinions. I told myself I was being a good husband. I told myself this was what successful marriages looked like. The man provides. The man accommodates. The man makes himself smaller so his wife can be happy. You know what I didn't realize? I wasn't being a good husband. I was being a doormat. And here's the thing about doormats. People don't respect them. People don't desire them. People walk all over them because that's what they're there for. My wife didn't want a perfect husband. She wanted a partner. Someone with opinions. Someone with boundaries. Someone who showed up as an actual person, not just a walking ATM and yes man. But I'd spent 50 years believing that perfection meant erasure. That love meant never causing any friction. That being needed was the same as being loved. It's not. Being needed is just being useful. And the second you're not useful anymore, or someone else is more interesting, you're disposable. After the divorce, I started going to therapy. First time in my life. I'm 70 years old, sitting in a therapist's office, trying to figure out what happened to my life. And my therapist asked me a question that destroyed me. She said, "In 50 years of marriage, did your wife ever actually know who you are?" I opened my mouth to say yes, of course. We were married for 50 years. But I couldn't. Because the answer was no. She didn't know me. Because I never showed her. I showed her perfect husband. I showed her provider. I showed her yes man. But me? The actual person with desires and needs and boundaries and opinions? I buried that guy so deep I forgot he existed. I sacrificed everything I was for someone who was lying to me for 30 years. And my kids, they barely know me either. Because I was always working, always providing, always absent because I thought that's what fathers did. I thought if I gave them everything materially, that was enough. It wasn't. Let me tell you about Robert. After the divorce was final, I did something stupid. I looked him up, found him on social media. You know what I discovered? He was nothing special. Average-looking guy, made less money than me, drove an older car, lived in a small apartment. But you know what he had that I didn't? He was present. He showed up as himself. He had opinions. He had boundaries. He asked for what he wanted. He wasn't perfect. And my wife, my ex-wife, she loved him for 30 years while being married to me. Because he was real, and I was a ghost. A very useful, very accommodating ghost who paid all the bills and asked for nothing. That's what haunts me. I wasted 50 years trying to be perfect for someone who wanted real. Here's what nobody tells you about being the perfect partner. Perfection is not attractive. Perfection is not desirable. Perfection is boring. It's suffocating. It's a prison for both people. When you erase all your needs, all your boundaries, all your desires, all your humanity, you don't become more lovable. You become less. You become a function instead of a person, a role instead of a human being. And here's the thing. People don't fall in love with roles. They don't desire functions. They connect with humans. Flawed, messy, complicated humans who show up as themselves and ask for what they need, and set boundaries and sometimes say no. I never said no. Not once in 50 years. Every request, every demand, every expectation, I said yes. I thought that made me a good husband. It made me a doormat, and it made her lose respect for me, lose attraction to me, lose interest in me, until there was nothing left but habit and convenience. I have a friend who died 2 years ago. His name was Tom. He was 75. Heart attack in his sleep. At his funeral, his wife of 52 years stood up and said, "Tom was the most stubborn, opinionated, difficult man I ever met, and I loved him more every single day." They'd fought constantly. They'd argued about everything. Politics, money, how to raise the kids, where to go on vacation, what color to paint the living room. But they'd fought as equals, as two whole people who showed up fully and clashed and made up and kept showing up. And she loved him, actually loved him, not tolerated him, not appreciated his usefulness, loved him, because he was real. I stood at that funeral and I envied a dead man. Because in 52 years, Tom's wife knew exactly who he was. She'd fought with him, disagreed with him, been frustrated by him, and loved him anyway. My wife spent 50 years with a stranger who said yes to everything and meant nothing. You know what my biggest regret is? It's not the affair. It's not even the divorce. It's that I wasted 50 years of my life being someone I wasn't, for someone who didn't even want that person. I could have been myself. I could have had opinions and boundaries and needs. I could have shown up as a whole human being and demanded to be treated like one. Maybe she would have loved me. Maybe she wouldn't have. But at least I would have lived my life instead of performing someone else's idea of what a husband should be. I'll never get those years back. I'm 73 now. If I'm lucky, maybe I have 10 or 15 years left. Maybe 20. Probably less. And I'm trying to figure out who I actually am underneath 50 years of performance. It's hard. It's like trying to find something you buried so long ago you don't even remember where you put it. Let me tell you what actually matters in a relationship. And this is going to sound embarrassingly simple, but I wish someone had told me this when I was 23. What matters is showing up as yourself, the actual you, not the version you think your partner wants. Setting boundaries, saying no when you mean no, asking for what you need, having opinions and expressing them, causing some friction sometimes because you're two different people and that's normal. Being willing to fight fairly about things that matter instead of swallowing everything to keep the peace. Respecting yourself enough to demand respect from your partner. I know it sounds simple. When I was your age, I would have rolled my eyes. Sure, but I want my marriage to work. I need to be accommodating. I need to compromise. And yes, you do need to compromise. But compromise is not the same as erasure. Compromise is not the same as always being the one who gives in. Compromise is not the same as making yourself smaller and smaller until you disappear. I'm not saying quit being kind. I'm not saying become selfish or demanding or difficult. I'm saying don't sacrifice who you are for someone else's comfort. Don't bury your needs so deep you forget you have them. Don't spend decades performing perfection for someone who doesn't even want it. Because here's the brutal truth. Perfection doesn't protect you from betrayal. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee loyalty. Being the perfect partner doesn't mean your partner will be faithful or honest or even kind to you. Sometimes the person you're bending yourself into knots for is lying to you. Sometimes the person you're sacrificing everything for doesn't even see you, and you won't know until it's too late. Here's a question I want you to ask yourself, and I want you to answer it honestly. If your partner left you tomorrow, would you know who you are without them? Would you have any idea what you actually want or need or believe? Or have you spent so long performing the role of perfect partner that there's nothing left underneath? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, that's good. Be uncomfortable. Because that discomfort might save you from wasting decades like I did. I didn't know who I was at 68 when my marriage ended. I'd spent 50 years being husband and father and provider, and I had no idea what was underneath those roles. I'm 73 now, and I'm still figuring it out. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're 70 to ask yourself what you actually want. After the divorce, I started doing things I'd never done. I took a ceramics class. Turns out I like working with my hands, making things that serve no purpose except being beautiful. I never knew that about myself because I spent 50 years only doing things that were useful or productive or served someone else's agenda. I started saying no to family obligations that drain me. My kids don't like it. They're used to me always saying yes, always showing up, always accommodating. But I'm done with that. I started dating, which at 70 is complicated and strange. But I'm learning to show up as myself, to say what I want, to set boundaries, to leave when someone doesn't treat me well instead of contorting myself to please them. It's terrifying. It's also the most alive I've felt in 50 years. I have grandchildren I barely see. 3 of them. My daughter has 2. My son has 1. They live close by, maybe 30 minutes away. But my kids are still angry at me. They blame me for the divorce, for not being present when they were growing up, for caring more about work than family. They don't know about the affair. My ex-wife never told them. She let them think it was my fault, that I drove her away by being emotionally distant. And maybe I was. Maybe my perfection, my absence, my constant working, maybe that was a kind of abandonment. But I was doing what I thought fathers did. I was providing. I was sacrificing. I thought that's what love looked like. Nobody told me that kids need presents more than presents. Nobody told me that wives need partners more than paychecks. Or maybe someone did tell me and I didn't listen. I was too busy being perfect. I see young couples now, in their 20s and 30s, and I see the same patterns. The man working himself to death to provide, the woman managing everything at home and slowly losing herself. Both of them performing roles instead of showing up as humans. Both of them thinking that sacrifice equals love. Both of them headed for the same place I ended up. Alone at 70, wondering what the hell happened to their lives. And I want to grab them and shake them and say, stop. Just stop. Be yourselves. Fight about things that matter. Say no sometimes. Ask for what you need. Stop performing perfection and start living. But they wouldn't listen. I wouldn't have listened either. You can't hear this when you're in the middle of it. You're living in the storm. You can't see the patterns yet. That's why I'm making this video. Because maybe, just maybe, if enough people hear this message, someone will wake up before they waste 50 years. Someone will realize that perfection is a trap, that martyrdom isn't love, that you can't sacrifice yourself into a good relationship. You can only show up whole and hope the other person does the same. And if they don't, if they want you to be small and quiet and accommodating, if they want a doormat instead of a partner, then they're not the right person for you. Even if you're married to them, even if you've been together for years, even if you have kids and a house and a whole life built together, if you're disappearing, if you're erasing yourself, if you're performing instead of living, it's not worth it. I promise you it's not worth it. Let me tell you what I would tell my 23-year-old self if I could go back. I would say, don't marry her. Not yet. Not until you know who you are. Not until you can show up as yourself instead of as perfect husband. Not until you understand that love is not the same as approval. That partnership is not the same as performance. That being chosen is not the same as being known. I would tell him, you're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to be difficult sometimes. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to ask for what you want. You're allowed to be human. But I can't go back. I can only go forward. And forward is strange at 73. I'm on borrowed time now. Every morning when I wake up, I'm aware that I don't have many mornings left. Maybe a few thousand if I'm lucky. Maybe less. And I'm trying to make them count. Trying to actually live them instead of just surviving them. Here's what I've learned in these last 5 years since the divorce. I've learned more about life, about relationships, about myself, than I did in the previous 68. I've learned that being alone is better than being with someone who doesn't see you. I've learned that conflict is not the enemy of love, dishonesty is. I've learned that you can be kind and accommodating and still have boundaries. I've learned that saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you honest. I've learned that perfection is not only impossible, it's undesirable. Nobody wants perfect. They want real. I've learned that the people who truly love you don't need you to erase yourself. They want you to show up fully, all of you. The good parts, and the difficult parts, and the messy parts. And if someone needs you to be small to feel big, they don't love you. They love what you do for them. There's a difference. I'm happier now, at 73, alone in my one-bedroom apartment, than I was at 68 in my big house with my wife of 50 years. That's the irony. When you stop performing, when you stop trying to be perfect, when you start living as yourself, life gets better. Smaller in some ways. I don't have the big house or the family gatherings or the appearance of success, but bigger in the ways that matter. I have myself back. I know what I like. I know what I need. I know what I won't tolerate. I have boundaries. I have opinions. I have desires. I'm a person again instead of a function, and that matters more than anything I gave up. You have a choice right now, today. Keep performing perfection. Keep sacrificing yourself. Keep believing that if you just do everything right, if you never complain, if you always accommodate, if you make yourself small enough, you'll be safe. You'll be loved. Your relationship will work. Or wake up. Realize that perfection is a prison. That sacrifice without reciprocity is martyrdom. That you can't erase yourself into a good relationship. Stop waiting for permission to be yourself. Stop believing that your needs don't matter. Stop thinking that causing any friction makes you a bad partner. Start showing up as a whole human being. Start saying no when you mean no. Start asking for what you need. Start setting boundaries. Start having opinions. Start being willing to fight fairly about things that matter. Start demanding to be treated with respect and dignity. And if your partner doesn't like it, if they want you small and quiet and accommodating, then maybe they're not the right partner. I know that's scary. I know it feels safer to just keep performing, Keep sacrificing. Keep hoping it will all work out. But it won't. Not if you're disappearing in the process. I'm 73 years old. If I'm lucky, maybe 10 or 15 more years. Maybe 20 if I'm blessed. Probably less. And I'm okay with that. Because these last 5 years have been more real than the previous 68. I've been more myself in 5 years alone than I was in 50 years married. That's sad. That's devastating. But it's also liberating. I'm not wasting another day performing for someone else. I'm not erasing myself for anyone's comfort. I'm here. I'm whole. I'm flawed and messy and complicated and human. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. The clock is ticking. For all of us, you don't have unlimited time to figure this out. You don't have decades to waste being someone you're not for someone who doesn't even want that version of you. You have right now, this moment, this day. What are you going to do with it? Keep performing or start living? If this resonates with you, share this video. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're going to do differently. Subscribe, because I have more truths to share and not much time left. The clock is ticking. What are you going to do with your time?